The temptation of Jesus is a scene that is narrated by all the three synoptic gospels. On the first Sunday of Lent, which we celebrate today, every year the church will read from this scene of the temptation. In year A, the gospel is from Matthew. In year B, it is from Mark. And in year C, it is from Luke. But in all the 3 years, on the first Sunday, we are invited to make a reflection on the temptations of the Lord, and more importantly, on how the Lord responded to the temptation. In the first reading of today, which is from the book of Genesis, we are given a glimpse into that world which the Lord had indeed created for human beings. And God wanted human beings to live in harmony. God wanted human beings to have this triple harmony, that is, the harmony between themselves, the harmony with nature, and consequently the harmony with God Himself. However, temptation came into the picture for the first human beings. And after God created human beings, the text says, and God saw that it was very good. Why does the text speak about good and bad when God never created anything that was bad? When God created the sun, He simply created the sun. And when God created the moon and the stars, He only created the moon and the stars. There was no good sun and bad sun, good moon and bad moon. And yet the text says so often in Genesis chapter 1, and God saw that it was good. And at the end of the creation of the human person, the text goes on to say not merely that God saw that it was good, but in Genesis 1:31, God saw that it was very good. The text is giving us a hint of what will come now. And the text is possibly saying that if there is good, you have to be careful that there might be bad. And if there is very good, it is very likely that there will be very bad. And already in Genesis chapter 3, which is part of our text for today, we will realize that it becomes very bad. And the reason why it becomes bad is because humans forgot their place. Humans forgot their identity. Humans forgot who they were. They wanted to usurp God's place. They wanted to put themselves in the place of God. And so when the human beings are tempted, they give in. And after the temptation, when they are brought to judgment, they blame each other. And finally, they blame nature. Because they had not grown up. They see the problem always outside of them, not within them. And Paul, in the second reading of today, in his letter to the Romans, summarizes this when he says, sin came into the world through human beings. And it is a human being who will remove this sin from the world and take us back to that original place which God intended we must be. And that is why in the gospel text from the Gospel of Matthew chapter 4 verses 1 to 11, we will read about the temptations of Jesus. Jesus has gone into the desert after his baptism to make a reflection on whether he can accept this mandate of God, whether he can accept this invitation of God through which he is called to be king, but also to be servant. And he goes into the desert for a period of 40 days. And when he comes back, he is tired, he is hungry, he is fatigued. And so when he is at his lowest, both possibly spiritually and surely physically, the devil comes to tempt him. And the first temptation of the devil is asking God, asking Jesus to work only for himself. Turn these stones into bread. The Lord responds that bread satisfies physical hunger, that bread is external food, but that there is a deeper kind of bread, there is a spiritual bread which goes beyond the physical bread. And so, the Lord will not become selfish. The Lord will not become self-centered. The Lord will not try to usurp, as the first human beings did, the place of God, because Jesus knows that the God Father will be God Father and that he will continue to be beloved Son. And so he rejects this invitation, this temptation which the devil gives him to turn stones into bread, to become a selfish and self-centered human being. The devil, however, is persevering. The devil, however, will not give up. And so the devil tries a second time. And the second time is the temptation to be sensational, to be miraculous, to show to the world that Jesus has extraordinary power, because the devil wants Jesus to go to the pinnacle of the temple and jump down from it. And he will not be harmed because he is God's Son. Jesus, however, was very clear all through his ministry that he was not a sensational Messiah. He was not a wonder-working Messiah. He was not a Messiah who merely worked miracles. The miracles were an extension of his work. The miracles were part of his ministry, just like his proclamation in parables was part of his ministry. So the miracles that he worked were also part of his ministry, and Jesus will respond to the devil in a like manner, saying that there is no need for sensationalism. Like the seed grows slowly but surely, so will his ministry be. If people believe in him only because he has miraculous powers, if people believe in him only because they think he's extraordinary, then that faith will remain a superficial faith and at a very, very shallow level. Jesus wants to take people to a deeper faith, to believe in him, to believe in God, not because of the external signs that he will give, not because of the wonders that he will work, but because of the spiritual food that they can keep receiving from him. In the third temptation, and once again we notice the perseverance of the devil. The devil will not give up and asks Jesus that he will give him all the powers of the world and to take these powers to himself. In Philippians chapter 2, verses 5 to 11, in the beautiful Christological hymn, we are told how Jesus emptied himself. Even though he was able to cling to his Godhead, he never clung to that Godhead as something to be grasped, but emptied himself, taking the form of a slave and becoming humbler yet, to accepting death on a cross. And so this invitation of the devil to give Jesus all of the worldly power doesn't make sense to Jesus, because Jesus already has all the power that he will ever need. In our own lives, we are often tempted in a variety of ways. Someone said tongue-in-cheek the best way to overcome temptation is to give in. And while we might laugh at the humor of this statement, there is a very deep truth contained in it. Often we give in at the slightest temptation, the temptation to be selfish, the temptation to be self-centered, the temptation to accumulate, the temptation to be powerful, the temptation not to be humble, the temptation to pride. These are temptations which keep coming our way. And on the first Sunday of Lent, through the response of Jesus, the church is inviting each one of us to ask ourselves how we respond to temptation. Will we respond like the first human beings did by giving in so easily because they wanted to usurp God's place and because we want to usurp God's place? Or will we respond like Jesus and say no to those temptations when they come? Let us ask the Lord for grace and strength to respond like He did whenever and wherever we are tempted. Amen.